Welcome to Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. Join Janet and her friends as they gather at the intersection of consciousness and self-experience, what being consciousness in human form is all about. Access heart-centered awareness with them and feel the difference in the moment that will last a lifetime.
Hello, and welcome to Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. I'm Janet Barrett, your host, guide, friend, companion, interested person, support, and signpost, perhaps. I could say that this podcast is a respite from your busy day, which it is. And what happens when I say I am offering you an oasis in letting go and becoming present, free of what you think of as yourself in your busy day? This is not like any other podcast. When you listen, you can feel how we are creating a different reality. Your breathing deepens, and this reality is of malleable time and space, where the story of who you've decided you are relaxes into the truth of your internal voice as essence, as connection, as consciousness. I have been offering this expansive sense of being for a year now. This is our 26th show. It has enriched my life in inarticulate ways and moved both me and my guests and friends in creating this reality I call Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. I am truly grateful for the delight in being alive as we close out this momentous year of 2019. We use words to try and encapsulate thoughts and feelings about being. Being is really not a describable state or sense, though we will try as we process through our human references. They are all we have, but it is through our sense of knowing that we know being. The first couple of words that come to mind about this end of year are emotional, quagmire, congestion, and clearing of all kinds on all levels of the personal that have been playing out in the public political arena never experienced before. It is us as consciousness choosing to evolve and better ourselves or fight to stay the same. This public arena has brought up out of our depths our often hidden emotional stuff, ripping away any social veneer. We are exposed. It has been a very emotional and uneasy ride to feel and to utilize as a way of transcendence. It has been dynamic. We all have emotions. They are essential as part of the human design. What we do with them is expressing not only our humanity, but our sense of spirit, essence, consciousness. My colleague in podcast land, Carol Olivia Adams, host of Matter of the Heart podcast, is my guest. We are going to consider how our emotions affect our physical forms, emotional well-being, and in creating healthy relations with ourselves, each other, and this unique planet and occupants. Our language is once again of the heart. It is feeling. It is allowing yourself to feel something and valuing it as information. It is welcoming connection, as that is what emotions do. They color our sense of connection. They are powerful internal inspirations and story and myth generators of what we call reality. I have had the pleasure of being a guest on Carol's show a couple of times and having her as a guest on episode 15 of this podcast. On that episode, we talked about her book, The Awakening of Friendship, which I totally recommend. It is essential, interesting reading, filled with lots of wonderful quotes and stories. Carol cares deeply about people in a no-nonsense, streetwise ways with an East Coast vibe. She, like all my guests and myself, recognize that life will offer its challenges and we each must make our way in the world. Being honest with ourselves is the only way to get what you want. Spirit and faith are always on our side. In the span of her long radio career, Carol Olivia Adams has interviewed over 250 guests in many genres, such as spirituality, lifestyle, self-help, medical, and many more. She has hosted her show, Intuitive Carol and Healers, on internet radio. Her present show, The Matter of the Heart, aired on AM radio and now is available on your favorite podcast platform. Carol always seeks to elevate the spirit of the listener-viewer with wisdom as its fuel. Alongside her radio endeavors, she is also an artist and an intuitive counselor healer, and her loyal clients connect to Carol with her use of astrology, the symbols of the tarot, channeling, aura visualization, and automatic handwriting. She is the author of the widely acclaimed book, The Awakening of Friendship. She provides us the 9 awakenings that offer a calling for every human being to look within their psyche, uncover these human principles of friendship, and embrace the universal tapestry of mankind. It is available on Amazon, and you can reach Carol directly at intuitivecarol@gmail.com. Her podcast, The Matter of the Heart, is available through your favorite podcast sites. And hello, Carol. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Janet. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. So, we're going to talk about being emotional creatures. I thought it would be a great way to end the year because it's just been such an emotional year. And I can't think of anyone better than yourself with your podcast, Matter of the Heart, as you explore each week or several times what it is to be an emotional reference as a human and what that's all about in relation to consciousness itself. So let's take a few moments here, if we may then, and bring everybody together, and then we'll get into the details. Would that be all right?
Definitely, sure.
All right.
Go to it, Miss Janet.
All righty. So everyone, thank you for joining us. And let's just take a moment to appreciate having a heart and what that's all about as we discuss a matter of the heart and all sorts of things. So in just noticing, we're going to just shift our awareness. We do this all pretty easy now, I think. Shift your awareness to within and the breath coming in through the heart and breathing through the heart, which is an easy thing to do. Is just shift your awareness there and feel that heart go out, come back in, and just back and forth. And allow yourself to be present. And there we go. Notice that. And so today, a lot of what we'll cover might bring up emotional energies for all of us in different ways. And it's our comfort with being and recognizing that our emotions serve us. And it's how we relate to them and how we express them ourselves as consciousness, soul, self, individuals, collective, in all these different ways. Emotions are a wonderful, they're really kind of entanglers. I think they're like spices in a soup. So just notice that. You may not think of yourself as a chef or a good cook, but one thing, we go by taste. A lot of life is dictated by how something tastes, and our emotions create that flavor. So in just noticing, there we go. I'm not judging, just realizing that emotions, it's how they work together. And they all have a vibration unique to each one. And sometimes we can be very confused by it because our references are not broad enough to handle, we make judgments about having emotions. Well, we're going to let go of that today. And as Carol and I explore with you what it's like to be emotional and how that can be the most wonderful thing about life sometimes. So, there we go. Now, what you noticing, Carol? Right in this moment.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm looking at it, which is great. We have the differences. I look at it that emotions are just in the present. I don't think there's any. It just happens. How we feel it. Feeling comes straight from the heart. It's spontaneous. Mm-hmm. So where I guess I'm coming from, it has nothing to do. And certainly I respect what you're saying, Jan, with consciousness. It has to do with being in the moment with the heart, expressing how we feel. If I was going to ask myself now, how do I feel? I'd say I feel relaxed, I feel comforted. I feel fairly inner security. So it's going back, how does that heart speak? The spirit of the heart. I think each emotion has a spirit. Some emotions are more difficult, to deal with, such as anger. When somebody is angry at you, the physical or the verbal punching bag, so to speak, and some emotions are easier, like the feeling of joy, the feeling of happiness. They're very smooth energy, and some emotions I think are not smooth. They're more, I would say, harsh energy. So it's a matter of, and some people are more emotional than others. Some people are very cerebral, and they don't know maybe how to. It's not even necessarily their fault, it's their history. They might not know how to express an emotion deep down inside. Maybe it's repressed. They can't get it out. So I think it's very simple because we're born with them. But I think as adults it becomes very complicated.
Yeah, experience has its way of interacting, doesn't it? Right. Well, okay, so let's be clear for everyone. We're going to notice this because what Carol is sharing with us is how we interpret, definitely. And it is subject to our biases and our perceptions of being emotional and what that means, and that gets into how we organize dealing with them. So let's start from the beginning. I think Carol is helpful for everybody. So we're kind of on the same reference. So everyone knows when we use the word heart that it has three meanings if you look it up in Webster's dictionary. And the first meaning is a physical. So there's the physical heart, and we talk about that. The second meaning is the emotional terrain, which is what we're focusing today on. And so when people use the word heart, some people are already in reaction in a triggered response because of how they relate to having emotions. And so they're going to be their reference. The third reference is as core essence, which is the land of consciousness, which is spirit, which is that undefinable because it doesn't have a form state of awareness, the intuitive state. So we're going to focus on how in the emotional terrain, how that can affect us in the different qualities, because you can hear as Carol describes emotions, that it's very textural to her, and you can feel the artist in her as she's experiencing how she relates in an emotional sense to things. And so for some of us who maybe don't have those references, we can I want you to notice what it would be like to have that artist's touch about emotions, because for Carol, it's always going to come from how you feel about something, and how you relate to something is how you feel about it. So in noticing that, there we go. And in the delight of appreciating that all those different kinds of emotions that you're talking about, Carol, whether it has an hard edge or a soft edge, is really how it all works together. It makes it interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, it makes it interesting because I think it defines more who the self-identity of the person. If somebody has more harsh emotions, it's reflecting on their personality profile. For whatever reason, everybody again has a history. If somebody is more gentle, or more elements of gentleness with their heart, and then it's affecting, again, it's more of a, I can actually see like a magnifying glass, more who they are as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, emotions, I think one of the highest emotions for me is the emotion of compassion. Because when somebody is compassionate, I prefer that word over love, because I think love can be used too randomly, without the extension of the heart. Compassion is an emotion to me because it fulfills the heart. The heart is extending itself to other people, understanding other people's energies, their struggles of life, their history. And it's opening up. It's just, it opens up the heart to its fullest degree, to feel the dynamics of that other human being.
Well, we talk about oneness a lot on this show, and I think that sounds like what the way you're describing it is that in that clear communication that we're all sharing and experiencing other people's emotions and identifying with them and in relation to them, and what happens in that lovely mix. And we all have emotions. We have different kinds of emotions, and I think the variety of things, like I know things that I wouldn't necessarily haven't considered as an emotion, but if I put that context to them, it kind of really opens it up and changes it. And I know one that you're familiar with, a Carl Jung statement: freedom is an emotion. It is not mere abstraction. It is an emotion. And when I use the word freedom because it's the freedom in being out of form and in form to me. And if I think of it in terms of an emotion, it kind of has a whole different sense of how I experience it. And I was taken when I noticed that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's something, maybe it's something that's not even explainable, freedom, because it's so much with the exhilaration of, I think, being exactly of where you want to be in that space, without anybody dominating your feelings or your heart. So, and I think that's a very a human principle for us to follow, freedom, because when we're born, we have that freedom. When we go to school, we have parents, we have other energies coming into our place that can kind of distract us from our sense of freedom, or exactly who we are. And I also think freedom is connected to who we are, our self-identity, because the more we know our self-identity, the more we're free.
Well, I think one thing that you're mentioning is that we can use the example of freedom. He's identifying it as emotion, where you also identified it as a state, a sense of it. So it's a sensory perception. And I think that's what makes things interesting texturally, is that we use our language. It's hitting us on both an emotional and an awareness state and in a sensory way. And so it's very things, I think, like those major emotions we'll talk about, like anger and jealousy and those, I'm trying to remember what the four are: joy, fear, whatever they are, is that because they're encapsulating a field awareness. I guess field is a better word. That there's the emotional component of it, there's a sensory component of it, and there's probably other things that I'm not mentioning in the moment. So it's really information, because that's my reference for tagging this kind of thing. So you experience it, and it's like freedom. It takes you someplace. You feel it, you think it, you touch it, however you can experience that information.
As I was listening to your words, I also thought of the word spirit, because I think spirit is freedom. When we're with our total spirit, with the rhythm of our life, I think the spirit is somehow connected to the rhythm of who we are when we dance. Even, our own innate spirit has freedom attached to it, because it's free.
Totally.
children are very free. When I used to substitute, they would talk about really a lot of things that were in the mysterious world. They would see ghosts. So they had more of a consciousness, if you want to use that word, or an awareness, because they weren't inside a box. See, the more we're inside a box, we don't have freedom.
So the box
more we're outside a box,
So the box you're describing is really mindsets, where you all of a sudden learn something and it closes down the freedom that you had to just be in the hold awareness of something. Right. As soon as so the child sees the ghost, the child experiences lots of different things, and until he's told that he doesn't or he can't, or we don't talk about that, then that's where he starts to lose that quality of assessing that freely.
Well, I think it's conformity. I think because people, once they could start conforming as they're indoctrinated with society, and parents and teachers and neighbors, whoever it is, and then as we're conforming, those principles, if you want to call them principles, or means, let's say means, are internal. They're inside the box. So we lose our spirit. We lose our freedom. The more, and you were mentioning before the artist in me, I think creative people, for whatever reason, artists, musicians, sculptors, great chefs, they're feeling all the time. They're not thinking. When I paint, I don't think. I don't want to think. Or a musician, they don't think. They want to get into that subconscious. They want to get into their spirit. And ultimately, they want to get into their freedom to express exactly their heartbeat.
So everyone notice, this is an interesting, fascinating discussion, exploration that we're having here, and it's going to touch on lots of different things. And we want to be paying attention when you feel things shift, or when a word sticks out in your mind and all of a sudden you're taken in that direction. So, because that's all information. And as we're just noticing and being present, as we're exploring emotions, I think what you can start to get a sense of is how you can't be free of emotions. And we're using the word freedom a lot here. They're in everything. Now we can think our way into saying it's just this, or this. But what we're really talking about here is that in being comfortable with our emotions, it's empowering ourselves to notice how we participate in life. There we go. And whether you're comfortable with the idea that you're emotionally oriented, or if you're a logic person, and I know a lot of people that would say they don't want to be emotional because they're thinking in terms of hysterical, or they have some kind of condition or definition on it, which is not true. Right? Because being hysterical is not being emotional. Being hysterical is beyond the emotion. It is just really digging into it. So, and just noticing. And you're going to find that if people are taken to their emotions and are display oriented and put everything out on their sleeve, like we talk about sometimes, their heart on their sleeve, that's really probably circumstances that someone's been pushed into. So just notice. Now, what else do you notice about emotions, Carol?
Well, as I was listening to you, Jan, I think emotions are innate, it's our emotional DNA. And some people are just going to be more emotional than others, and that's why they go into certain professions. Emotional has to do with the sensitivity level of that person as well. And that's why certain people will go into a tech type of job, and are comfortable with a box, and other people need to be free and express their emotions, So I think a lot of times if you look at people, they are in certain situations of life or professions because their emotions subconsciously, whatever you want to call it in a subtle way, is dictating that profession, and all types of relationships that person gets connected to.
Well, and I think right there you're talking about how in certain situations and in certain job descriptions like first responders and people like that, the emotion is present, but then it takes a back seat to the interaction, right? And it has to do that in order for whomever to be able to do what he needs to do. If you're in an emotional response at that moment, it's going to color and distract perhaps and take your attention elsewhere from where you really want it to be focused on. And I think that's a very valid awareness that you're reminding us of us is that we're still all emotional. It's just how you're utilizing them and where you're allowing yourself to not necessarily be directed by them. But I can guarantee a first responder is an emotional person because they want to be helpful. They want to help in some way. That's an emotional response to me. And then they have to put that aside so that they can do what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, obviously, we're all born with emotions. But I just think, again, going back to the innate aspect, some people are just innately born with more of an intense emotion. Some person might have a level 2, some person might have a level 8, That's who they are. That's their personality profile. Good or bad, there's no even saying good or bad. That's just simply who they are. And through life, then we learn how to adjust that emotion. I mean, I think anger is a very harsh emotion. And some people don't know how to adjust that emotion because a lot of times people, when they're angry, they walk away. They don't apologize. They just walk away. So, it's a matter of also how does that person heal an emotion that's not necessarily sensitive to the other person, and do they even become aware of it?
Well, that's interesting because our ability to relate to one another and to be able to correctly interpret out of our own space, right? Because if we're emotional, we're not always noticing the other person's emotions, and we're projecting often the other person's emotions. And when we're faced with something strong like anger, we may be in a defense or in a reaction to or feeling the anger, and it kind of takes us out of our own sense of who we are, and now we're more in the experience of the other person's directives. And in being able to navigate all this, we have to appreciate that no matter what level of emotions we're present to, there is emotion there. And how the person relates to their own emotional state, how you relate to your own emotional state, and then in the interaction of experiencing their emotional state is where all this interesting navigation has to take place, and we're negotiating all the time. And I think we do disservice to another to assume that they're not responding as we would respond emotionally in some situation and then make a judgment based on that.
Well, I can't help but think how to heal an emotion.
Okay.
Sometimes an emotion takes over. And sometimes if there's or I hate to use the word jealousy because I've never used it, but I have seen people in that realm. It's how to heal that emotion. Because sometimes an emotion connects to it's another trigger point. Some people that are very, quote, jealous are very insecure, and that's why they're jealous. They don't have that sense of security within themselves.
Right.
So it's also how to, if it's possible, some people will, some people won't, whatever, to recognize emotion that is not doing our best interest for our own self-growth, and our own transformation, our spiritual growth, etc. To recognize it. And some people won't. They just won't. And some people will. And those that will go on another vibrational level as far as healing and becoming exactly who they are.
Well, the one thing I would have to has always been mine, and I mention it on the show frequently because I have such wonderful guests. We're always exploring this kind of thing, is that we're not really well trained in emotional dynamics. I don't think we can go to public school and learn about English, and we can learn about addition. But when you get off that field and you get into the playground is where you deal with the emotional energies. And I don't know that they're all handled in any state of grace. And so it's what I hear in your words there is that sometimes people can hold that they're not able to evolve their emotions, and what we're dealing with is we all were children once, and we know that in child development, age 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at least, that there are places where development emotionally takes place, and we can see adults that are stuck at a particular age, and they're still the town bully. They don't know how to share. They just, in the emotional development, it got stuck or arrested someplace. And what you're talking about in the healing sense to me is where that emotional directive can be educated. It got stuck for some reason, and we need to realize that as spirit, as consciousness, as an evolving sense of being, that anything that feels stuck can be different. And that's my awareness of how I hold myself. Now, certainly other people may feel, that's it. He's always going to be angry. He's always going to be angry. And we have things called anger management classes, which I think is kind of the strangest thing, because I don't want to manage anger. I just don't want to I don't want to have to manage my anger, right? I want to take it down so there's no energy unless it's an appropriate response. When you're talking anger management, you're talking about anger that is out of congruency with the trigger, right? It's just a triggered state you're dealing with. It's not, there's nothing wrong with anger. It is a healthy thing to have. It will move you places. And then you have the kind where it becomes abusive. And those are different states of how you relate to it.
Yes, that's what I was talking about. When somebody is angry and they direct it at another person without any any truth to it, They just it's like a quick energy and that person just leaves without an apology. Yeah,
it's like performance art, it's like
performance. They're doing their Oscar their Oscar performance.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had talked earlier about healing fear and insecurity, anger, jealousy, and our conclusion seemed to be that all those were coming out of a state of insecurity. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I think insecurity is the root of a lot of. I don't even think anybody can be totally secure.
Yeah. Right.
I think I had to reflect on that with one of my guests. I think comfort helps. I think it's harder to feel totally secure maybe on your own. I think one person can feel more secure if they're living with somebody and it's a healthy relationship. I think there's a terrific dynamic with that difference.
Mm-hmm.
The person that lives on their own is certainly challenged to feel more security, and that can also be very positive because they're getting much more into themselves and their own self-identity. But insecurity can be a trigger point for certainly with because of fear. If somebody is insecure, they're going to have fear. Mm-hmm. And they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand with jealousy. Insecurity, I think the ultimate way to go around it or to deal with it is to feel the security of oneself and to link it with faith.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we combine faith and recognize that we do have a partner, the spiritual partner, especially for people on their own, that they do have a spiritual partner, and that each step has its divine order, if they believe in this, and, a divine order, divine path, then that sense of security can become much more comforting, that there is a partner there. It's a huge difference when somebody lives with somebody and somebody does not live with somebody. There's a huge difference. And, of course, I'm talking about as long as it's a healthy relationship,
Yeah, right,
but,
because you can feel, triggered
right.
when you're without, you can living with
right.
someone you don't feel secure with, right?
Right. Then that can create another issue. But I think both have their pros and their cons. But the key to me is the security, to recognize that there is a powerful force that is with us, and there is a divine purpose in life, divine path, and that there are signs that to follow the synchronicity. So if we follow the signs, as Carl Jung, of course, created the word synchronicity, if we follow those signs, then we have to feel, or certainly can help us to feel more secure with ourselves, because we know we're not alone.
Right, everyone notice. So what Carol's sharing with us is the security that comes in knowing oneself as more than just a physical self, right? As an emotional self, that we're talking about being in our connection as our awareness of spirit and consciousness, and the security that we can hold in that. And this is what we do in being present, and this is what we feel right now in this moment, is that those definitions that self has organized itself around, whether it's living in a safe situation or with someone that it trusts, or however it's experiencing self, that the essence within knows it's okay. And it's how connected we are to that informational state and being present, and how we define ourselves. And so the freedom and being out of form, there's no threat. The body is going to incorporate in its physical realm a life, and it to live, and that's its mandate, is to go on to the next moment. And the compromising situations that it might experience in that. So we're talking about in recognizing that sometimes self can get distracted by what it finds itself experiencing, and that we can always call back on and take a breath, breathe through the heart, and find this centering again, that we are all right. And regardless, I have to keep giving up irregardless, that regardless of what our circumstances may say, that in the essence that we all embody, that we are doing just fine. And especially in terms of this tumultuous year. I think I'd use the word tumultuous for this year, don't you think, Carol? It's been a tumultuous year emotionally.
Well, I know what you're saying, but astrologically we're going into Jupiter is in Capricorn. There's going to be a lot of Capricorn signs, for 2020. So people who have that Capricornian energy in them, it's not going to be so much tumultuous. It's going to be very opportunistic in all areas of their lives. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if it's, I know what you're saying. I respect what you're saying. I'm not sure I agree with the tumultuous. I think.
Well, I say in the past year, it has been. For the past year.
I don't look at it like that. I think one consistent element of life is change. And sometimes when it can look tumultuous, it can be given very peaceful with a new framework. Mm-hmm. So sometimes if we feel it's tumultuous or things are shifting energies a lot, well, then there's another thing. There's always a rainbow. I look at it behind the cloud. We don't not see the rainbow, but we certainly can believe and have faith that there is something behind the clouds, Mm-hmm. So I don't look at it as tumultuous. I just don't.
Well, from my sense of working with people this last year, that there have been so many energetic transitions and openings, and however the reference is in just a general term, and that a lot of people emotionally, I have been noticing, have really felt overwhelmed and all kinds of different things. And that's my only regard to that, because I think underneath the rainbow is totally what I've been talking about. That, and it is as fleeting as a rainbow, sometimes our connection to it, right? That sense that all is as it should be and everything is just fine. And I'm not really attached to the outside experience of what my body may be having, because I appreciate that that's totally being held in a reference of, oh, let's just experience something. So, yeah, no, I don't mean that in a sense that I see. I think it's embracing chaos. It's how you embrace chaos. It's been a very chaotic year, and for me, that's change. I appreciate change. I think that's the real awareness that we hold it in, and it's how you organize your sense of change and how you relate to it is where the tumultuous feeling comes in.
Well, a lot of times, though, again, I look at it differently. It's how people can adapt to it. And people who had struggling backgrounds in their earlier years can adapt to it much better. People who have easier lifestyles, mostly in their life, and then all of a sudden something happens that they won't know how to deal with it because they haven't learned life lessons. They haven't learned to be streetwise. So I think a lot of it has to do with that person's history, with their story, because people who have had more struggle, I see this all the time, with people who have had more struggling backgrounds, can adjust to it easier and will not use that word tumultuous at all, because they've been used to that. They had that, when they were growing up. And now it's simply just to adjust to it in a streetwise way, not a cerebral way, in a streetwise way. Their tools, their survival tools. Some people have better survival tools than others. Some people can beat stage 4 cancer. Some people will walk away. Some people have better skills at, something like a relationship that doesn't. It depends on the survival tools of that person, and a lot of times it has to do with their challenging lifestyle growing up and the type of profession that they have been in. Because there are easier professions versus harder professions. People that are on their own business, whatever it is, an artist, a musician, is just in their own business. I had a couple of retail stores have a harder because they're on their own. They're on their own. They have to count the client, the person that walks in the store to pay the rent. The person who is a teacher and gets a salary no matter what, and then gets a pension no matter what, and gets 5 year, what do you call that? After 5 years, I forgot what it's called. They can't get fired.
Tenure.
Oh, you don't want to hear the word I would use for that one. George Carlin would help me out if he was
Yeah.
But, there are certain, it's a matter of the history of the person, how their survival tools, and how they can adapt to the present situation.
So what that gives them is an emotional expansiveness, do you think? Plasticity, elasticity, and having all these different kinds of experiences? Or it helps, but it's not going to solve the problem necessarily, because they've got a certain way they've oriented themselves about life.
Right. It creates depth. I've seen that over and over and over again. I connect much better to people who've had difficult childhood. It creates depth, and of course, from New York City, you have to learn, depth and learning how to adapt to the present situation in no la-la land. I mean, I've noticed a lot of teachers are in la-la land, and I don't knock the profession at all. I used to be a substitute. But anybody who or any type of profession where the pension is coming in, where they have freaking tenure, is a different type of a psychological, spiritual adaptation to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like you get the guarantee, but then
Right.
you have that, but then that is certainly can turn around and someone creates a disease or a process or something, and they don't enjoy the retirement. They, something totally compromises it. So it's how we experience life, and you've described the wonderful myriad and diversity in being human, and they're all having emotions. We're all in this emotional soup, and it's how we pick up from our neighbor and project to our neighbor and influence everything, and we're being influenced in this emotional mass that's around us. And gosh, yeah. And still we go on. That speaks to me of consciousness, of spirit, of essence being present and willing to be experienced in the real, what we call real world, and everybody's organizing that real world differently. They're all in their, we have shared aspects of reality, but then we're all in our individual realities and our setups.
Well, I do like Kahil Gibran's quote, "Love has no other desire than to fulfill itself." I think it's just a very present moment. I don't think it has to do with anything cerebral at all. I think society creates Valentine's Day, and all of a sudden people have to buy gifts. I mean, it's a present form. It's a present form, and to me, it also a higher element of it is compassion. Because a lot of people who use that word, if you hear them, they talk to you for 2 minutes and they say, "I love you." I don't know where the hell they come from. To me, it has to be a very real substance, and that real substance has to do with compassion.
So everybody notice, because love is an interesting word. I have a feeling, I agree with Carol, that most of us don't know what love is. We know our conditioned response, or if it's conditional love or unconditional love, you're still in a condition, and I think love has no conditions on it. So it's a kind of a different conversation than the way most of us experience what we think we know about love. And so we're talking about clearing away all of that and taking any condition off of love. And what is left is the different values you can find in love. And I think you're right, Carol. The compassion is one of those in the range of the bandwidth, let's say, of what love is, and joy, and these things that empower us to enjoy our experience about love. And being compassionate is a form of love. It just means you're not immobilized by it, right? Because I think sometimes we associate love with being immobile in a certain sort of way. But
Right. I mean, it's just the state of it. It's a heart. It's a heart. Love is heart. Because when people are compassionate, they're coming from the heart. There's no mindset here. They're totally coming from the heart. And again, people who have struggled in life tend to be more compassionate, providing money doesn't take over their heart. That they can be much more compassionate because they felt, you see, when you feel deeply growing up at a younger age, it hits the heart deeper. So you can't help but feel deeper, and then you can't help in your later life feel deeper for other people that are struggling. So it's a beautiful trait. I mean, I just think it's a beautiful trait, compassion. And I really cherish the word very strongly, much more so than the word love.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because most of us, I think, don't really... Yeah, there's too many conditions it swims in. So...
Right. I think that's the word, conditions.
Yeah.
Too many conditions.
Right.
If you don't buy me flowers, I'm not going to buy you something. You know what I'm saying? Right. If you don't get me a Christmas gift, I'm not going to... screw you, I don't love you anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on and on with,
So I think some of those
Um,
textures, some of those textures in the bandwidth would be appreciation and gratefulness and compassion. And I'm sure there's some other words in the moment that I'm not tracking, but we get it all confused. And I think we underappreciate and understand that we all want to be loved, that insecurity is coming from a state that we don't know that we're loved, right? We don't have a sense of that deep in us, that we are precious. And whether we got that from someone else, and whatever the parental role was at it, if there was conditions on that, there was just mindless acceptance.
Right.
Then it's always corrupted, and that to me is probably more what I think people experience is corrupted love. It's got something going on with, and so how to be. So everyone just be noticing how you demonstrate, experience,
and love.
Right. And
are you coming from a manipulative point of view? Or you're coming from an insecurity point of view?
Yeah.
See, some people I've noticed will use the word love because they're insecure and they want to hear the word coming back to them. And then they're wonderful to the day. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, where is the essence? Kahil Gibran, love has no other desire than to fulfill itself. Period. Bingo. Next. There should be nothing underneath it all. I love you. Why don't you love me? I gave you a gift. You didn't give me a gift. Where are we going to go? Can we go away this vacation? What if we don't go this vacation? I don't love you anymore. I mean, there's too much stuff with this. It doesn't make sense.
Right. So just notice, everyone.
Well, just note my emotions when I said that, John.
Yeah. And to be passionate, look at that. You're passionate about people appreciating what it is. And I totally, hallelujah. That's great. I support you there. Right. Because we see that the physical form, incarnating or coming into form gives us a different appreciation of when we're out of form. And we realize what we take for granted as spirit or essence with no boundaries and stuff, that the framework becomes very limiting here, when you come into this shape, and then you get to define it and you get to qualify and quantify it, and you go, is this what I thought this might be? And it's this wonderful unfolding that we all are in the moment of realizing, actually, this is an act of love for me, Carol, that in providing this moment together that we're all sharing in, this is love. That being able to accept ourselves as we find ourselves and not judge. Whoa, now that maybe right there is love. And you can take it however you want to experience it, and we will automatically. And what we're doing here is getting beneath the automatic storied response, the habituated response, and just feeling how one can engage in conversation, and respect is still present. Oh, that's one of those words we needed to include, respect. There we go. Yeah. Appreciation, gratefulness, gratitude. Gratefulness, gratitude, I suppose are the same. And love, celebrating the individual and the essence all at the same time. Yeah. So everyone, just notice. Yeah. So I think we've given an active demonstration of love, don't you think, Carol?
Yes.
Maybe some people don't know.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing in this. See, and your passion took us there. I love it. Okay. So everyone, just there. So let me see. Do you notice anything else? Maybe that's a great place to end this, Carol. What anything come to mind that we haven't maybe explored or that you'd like to share?
Well, I think we covered everything, Janet. I mean, of course, there's going to be much more, but also linking with that is also self-love. To love to really look at who we are, even write it down. And to value who we are and our mission, and love our mission in life, and realize that we do have a mission, and then to follow I call it the yellow brick road. Realizing that who was he? The guy behind the
Oz,
the curtain there,
salesman.
Right,
yeah.
right. The salesman. I love it.
Yeah.
The salesman is hocus pocus, whatever you want to use. That the wisdom is within ourselves, and not somebody behind us.
It's all about going back home, and home is essence in each of us, right? And I think that is so well put, to love ourselves. So everyone, in noticing how you're experiencing this moment and realizing that is for yourself, this is the ultimate in self-care, if you're going to use a term like that, is to love yourself. And no matter what form you have taken, no matter what emotional state, no matter your experiences, no matter your judgments, no matter anything, it's loving oneself. It's enjoying and not judging. So if we take the judgment out and we look at that and go, okay, in my ledger of pros and cons about being, how am I doing this week? How am I doing in this moment? And in sharing and enjoying what Carol and I have been wrapping our year around. That change is possible. Change happens all the time. And it's how in agreement we are with it. There we go. And being spirit in a human form really is a work of art. Thank you, Carol.
Oh, thank you, Miss Janet. I just wanted to make a comment with that. You see, the more we love ourselves, the more our emotions will be truthful to who we are. Ooh, and the more truthful to who we are, the more secure within ourselves of who we are. And with no fear of expression, any type of an emotion.
Yeah, because they become a different self-regulatory on them, don't they? If they're not suppressed, if they're if they're not allowed to not be expressed or fulfilled to the degree.
Self-love.
Right.
The more we get into who we are, the more we love who we are, then we'll express ourselves truthfully, without any form of manipulation which hides the truth.
Right. Because I would have to say that, most people, I'll just throw it out there. My experience with people is that they have emotions. There's some kind of compromise in demonstrating it because of some history or awareness on some level, and so they don't say something. They have some condition to being true and in their authentic voice about expressing it because there's a push behind it. And what we're looking for is being able to acknowledge our emotions without that push, without that suppression, without that second agenda, without that other motivator there, because it has no place anymore. Because in being able to say, this is the way I experience what you just said emotionally. Was that your intention? And, oh, okay, I noticed that way. It triggered something, and let me just be with that for a moment. Does not mean that you have to go out and turn into a raging fiend. It means that you're acknowledging your humanity, and you're okay with it, and you're still not in a state of to do harm. There's no harm in being able to acknowledge oneself. And I think that's what a lot of this, we want to get in this field awareness and clear. There we go. Yeah. Everybody breathe. It is good to be alive. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Miss Janet. Thanks, boys.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Carol really enjoys Dr. Bernie Siegel. As a doctor, he first gained notice for presenting self-healing empowerment for his cancer patients. Since retiring, he writes and advocates humanizing the medical establishment's approach to patients and empowering patients to play their vital role in achieving their own greatest potential. He is a frequent guest on the Matter of the Heart. She recommends his book, 365 Prescriptions for the Soul, daily messages of inspiration, hope, and love for you to enjoy. And I will recommend Carol's own book, The Awakening of Friendship. Both are available on Amazon. Our quotes this time include Carl Jung. Freedom is an emotion. It is not a mere abstraction. It is an emotion, which I think is great. Then Kahlil Gibran. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself, from his book, The Prophet. And this one from Mason Cooley. Compassion brings us to a stop, and for a moment we rise above ourselves. And this quote is Carol's favorite about life. It's from the artist Robert Villette. The human heart feels things the eyes cannot see and knows what the mind cannot understand. My blog this episode is Our Lovely Emotional Ebbs and Flows, and it's available at my website blog page at www.janetandbeyond.com and can be heard on my YouTube channel, Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Tom's meditation, Choosing Your Emotional State, is from his extensive meditation archive at Interlude, an internet retreat.
Some thoughts on choosing our emotional states. In olden days, if you were a serf, you had no choice where you lived. You stayed where your parents had grown up, or you went where your lord told you to go. You were powerless and stuck where you were, and there wasn't much you could do about it. Many of us live that way in our emotional lives now. We passively accept the emotional states that come over us, or we use artificial mood changers like drugs, alcohol, and the media to get us out of our sour-tasting emotions. It doesn't have to be that way. We can exert considerable control over our mental, emotional states if we choose to. Sometimes we may want to calm ourselves. Other times we may want to be more energized. Either way, we just need to attend to a few of our behaviors and make some adjustments. Usually we think that our emotions cause changes in our physical condition. If we're sad, our face frowns and our posture slumps. If we are angry, we get physically tense and we breathe more rapidly. When we're happy, we smile. What we may fail to realize is that the system works both ways. If we intentionally change our breath, posture, and expression, we are likely to experience emotional shifts that reflect those changes. Our brain's limbic system is responsible for regulating emotion, and it's locked up inside the middle of our head. It needs information from outside to know what emotions to generate. It checks for sensory input. What's going on outside? If the senses pick up a lot of signs that there is anger directed at us, the limbic system will be prepared to match that by generating anger. Importantly, it's also monitoring what our body is doing and what thoughts we are generating. If this limbic emotional control center observes that there is an angry, red-faced guy shouting at us, but that we are breathing slowly and smiling, it will keep seeking information before going into red alert. It will assess what's going on in our thoughts. It will check for memories of similar situations. For instance, if angry red-faced guy was once associated with us getting hit, the emotional center may run the fear and escape subroutine. But the limbic system will also check for rational analysis. Observing that this angry red-faced guy is only 3 years old, fear is not required. Continued calm remains an option. It will also check for our sense of confidence. If we generally think of ourselves as being able to manage children well, the calm state can continue. If we think we can't handle a child's tantrum, we may get the fear and anger emotional package. The point is that our emotional mind requires input to know how to respond. The input from the external world that comes in via the senses is only one stream of data among several. When we use our higher-level mental processes to manage the input to our limbic system, we get the emotions we choose to have rather than the ones our emotional brain thinks we should have. So if we want more control over our emotions, we need to be more aware of our thoughts and behavior. We must become more mindful. What follows is a description of some things we can do to alter our emotional states. Try them out. Observe the subtle changes that may occur in your emotions as you change what you do with your body and mind. First is breathe. Our autonomic nervous system, which responds to the brain's limbic system, is in charge of regulating breathing, heart rate, digestion, and numerous other operations related to emotions. The most accessible way to affect that system is by changing the breath. Slower, deeper breathing brings relaxation and calm. Faster, sharper breathing brings up energy. Try breathing in a way that stimulates the ha, ha, ha of laughter, and you may notice an emotional shift toward happiness. Posture. If we slump our shoulders and cast our eyes downward, we are likely to feel sad. If we look defeated, our emotions will match. If we sit or stand up straight, elevate the rib cage just a bit, and look out at the world, we're likely to feel more confident and powerful. If we lean back with our feet up and hands behind our head, we're likely to feel more relaxed. As a general rule, postures that open your rib cage and allow deeper abdominal breathing lead to relaxation. Facial expression. We smile when we are happy. The emotional brain thinks, therefore, that if we are smiling, happiness is the appropriate emotion to create. Practice the half smile you can see on any image of the Buddha. This subtle relaxation of the face and very slight upturning of the lips can induce a lighter, brighter feeling. Thought. Cognitive behavior therapy is built on the premise that what we think largely determines what we feel. If we're depressed, we need to break out of the thinking habit that generates sadness, fear, dread, and futility. It's easy to observe that our thoughts can bring us down. Hang out with your most pessimistic thoughts for a while, and you'll surely feel unhappy before long. On the other hand, when we generate more self-affirming, grateful, and hopeful thoughts, our emotions take on a brighter tone. Consciously directing our thoughts, we can guide our emotions. To be more energetic, give yourself more enthusiastic thoughts. To be calmer, give yourself peaceful thoughts. To experience more joy, put your mental attention on thoughts of gratitude and compassion. Visualization or mental imagery. Some of our thinking is verbal, but much of it is imaginal. We remember and create multisensory images in our minds and associate them with emotional states. If you think of a time in your life when you were most happy, sad, or frightened, you will likely re-experience some level of those emotions. If you imagine being in a safe, pleasant place and imagine it vividly, including all of your senses, you will likely feel pleasant emotions and a sense of calm. Imagining a successful outcome to a challenge you face can make you feel more confident and may add to your chances of success. On the contrary, if you predict disaster, you are more likely to get one. intention. If we were going to sail across the ocean, it would be a good idea to know how to navigate, or have a good navigator along. A navigator uses a destination, or at least a waypoint, to orient towards. Otherwise, we might just go where the wind blows. When we decide to master our emotions, we are setting a direction. We decide that we aren't going to be blown around by the force of the external events. We have the power to decide the type of emotional life we want to live. Wanting to be more peaceful at heart, we decide to do the things that create that condition. We practice mastering our emotions. We let go of thoughts that keep us upset. We breathe. We're attentive to our posture and facial expression. We take care of our bodies. We guide our thoughts to be more loving.
You can reach Carol directly at intuitivecarol@gmail.com. Carol's book, The Awakening of Friendship, available on Amazon, and her show, The Matter of the Heart podcast, is available through your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me here at Journeys to Enlightenment with Janet. A new episode is released every 2 weeks. Any questions or thoughts or guests you'd like to suggest, you can email me directly at janetandbeyondpodcast@outlook.com. For more information about all the elements that make up each episode, they are on my podcast page at my website, www.janetandbeyond.com. While there, you will also find information about my other podcast show, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and all about my work with clients. You can sign up to receive my regular weekly blog, Life in the Beyond, Journeys into Enlightenment. If you're looking for other regular opportunities to sit in heart-centered awareness with myself and others, you can join us in my Fuzzy Photons playground groups I offer on Wednesdays. Live interactive space via Zoom video conferencing. You can follow each episode of this podcast series on my YouTube channel, Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Till the next time, notice what feels different right in this moment. It is real, and it can last a lifetime.